Many people already know about the very much and potentially overhyped Outriders. What is Outriders, you ask? Why, it is only the most anticipated co-op looter shooter from the RPG gods, Square Enix. These are the guys who made the Final Fantasy VII Remake, Kingdom Hearts 3, and Nier Automata. Square Enix is very well known for putting out great single-player content, so one would think that they could take on the challenge of making a looter shooter, right? Well, they did develop the Marvel's Avengers game, and we all know how that went. When I first loaded up the game on my Xbox, I was very happy to see the People Can Fly logo. For those of you who have been blinded by AAA first-person shooters all of your life, these are the same people who made the very much loved Bulletstorm and the old but good Painkiller. Look them up, kids. These are the good ones. Unfortunately, today's game does not show either company's best colors when it comes to quality control or decent decision-making. If you know a thing or two about context clues, you are probably already assuming that I did not like this game. And you would be right. Outriders, to me, is a perfect example of what can happen when you let the class dunce take the lead on a group project. You get a confusing yet slightly functional mess that nobody wants to present. But your names are on it, and you need to suck up, stand, and deliver. I'm going to do my best to be as fair as I can be in this review. It may have frustrated me to my very core, but I do genuinely believe that there was a good game in here. It's just not fully realized and definitely should have been delayed. So without further delay, let's shoot all the things, roll some epics, and try not to swear at our TVs. This is Outriders.
Hey! Whoa. Whoa, sorry guys.
The premise of Outriders is not difficult to understand. You, along with hundreds of thousands of people, have arrived on Enoch, a new Earth, so to speak, since Earth itself has been practically sapped of resources and is now uninhabitable. As the prologue progresses, you basically learn that the humans suck all around and that there is a thing called the Anomaly which causes mutations and zaps about half of your crew, including the player character. Most people are killed by the Anomaly when being zapped by it. Others that are zapped and not killed are mutated into what are called the Altered. Basically super beings with the power of gods. After being locked inside a cryopod in order to save your life, you wake up 31 years later out of cryosleep and are thrown into an anomaly storm and get your powers. You pick one of 4 classes and continue through no man's land, slaughtering everything in your way. Whatever you do, don't pick the Pyromancer or the Devastator. You eventually make it to the good guy's side and meet up with the crew that you left behind when you were frozen for 30 plus years and start your journey. The story of Outriders at first was catching my attention, but fell short after so long. Instead of it being mysterious, it felt padded and artificially stretched out. More questions were presented than answers. I mean, you never learn why the Altered even exist in the first place. All you know is that some are killed and some are altered or mutated with superpowers. The characters I never truly grew to love or appreciate. Mostly, everyone is a jerk and just fight over stupid things constantly. Shauna and Bailey, for example, their whole feud just gets nauseating really fast, and it just becomes a pointless catfight most of the time. Yakov was cool and all, but he is killed off before more depth can even be given to him. I understand that he goes through a bit of an redemption arc, so to speak, but for me to even care for a character, they actually need to be likable and relatable to some degree. The player character, him or herself, isn't really all that likable either. At first, I was starting to like them. Then, when I realized that they were just a dude or a chick who basically does all the work for everyone, it just grew repetitious to see them resolve every problem the same way. And that was by either curb stomping or shooting everyone in the head that got in their way. Heck, half the time the cutscenes wouldn't even work. After I beat the idiocy I call a final boss, I couldn't even enjoy the end scene. It lagged so hard in the audio and had so much texture pop in that I could not genuinely enjoy it. The reward that I was supposed to have after going through 30 plus hours of this slog of a campaign was that. I couldn't even capture the end scene and show it on the video because the game crashed shortly after the cutscene. To put it more bluntly, the story was just very lackluster. I was drawn in at first, but I got sick of it really fast. I just wanted to get to the end and write this review before I tore my own hair out. It's pretty clear that this game is not finished. Its formula gets stale after a short while and leaves much to be desired. For a game that brags about not being a live service game, it sure does act like one. But that doesn't mean that the developers don't manage to do some things right. Like I said before, I am going to give credit where it is due. So I am going to do my best to sandwich this information as much as possible. First, the structure of the gameplay itself. You can confidently compare it to something like The Division 2, except more bloody and not needing to use cover at all times. You could also argue that it is more like Destiny because of all of the anomaly powers. Either way, I have to say that you are right. Only during the prologue are you really pushed to use cover at all. Once you get your powers, this mechanic is practically useless. The reason why I say this is because of how you heal in the game. There are no health packs to be had in the environment. Each class requires you to heal on your own by either using your abilities or killing up close. So it makes using cover really pretty much useless unless you are getting sniped or overrun by 10 plus soldiers all shooting you at once. Even then, melee type enemies are usually thrown at you, making it even less feasible. Speaking of melee, every class's melee ability is practically the same. It's just a force push ability that causes a status ailment depending on the class. If it was something more unique for each class, I probably wouldn't be so bothered by it. For example, Devastators could have a Rock Fist Punch, Tricksters could have an Energy Blade that stabs into one enemy and slows them down, Technomancers could have the Force Push with a freezing ability, then Pyromancers could have a short-range Flame Whip or Climb attack that sets enemies on fire. How is it I am coming up with better melee attacks than the developers did? What they did get right with the classes were the specialty trees. Each class can be respect at any time with no additional cost to resource or supply. This allows players to put together whatever kind of build they want at any time. If a particular build is just not working for them, they can always try something different and figure out what does work. Customization gets even better thanks to the modding system. You can practically mod any piece of loot. Of course, this comes at the expense of resources, iron for weapons, leather for armor. The last thing that does take a bit of a hit is how many times you can mod the gear. You can only do it once. Then the mod slots are locked and cannot be moved around anymore. You can, however, keep leveling them up or raising their rarities/attributes. As you find gear, you will be equipping and dismantling a lot. Nice thing is that whenever you dismantle a piece of gear, you get any mods and buffs that it had so you can use it later for modding. There's also a thing called world tiers that determine what difficulty you are playing on and supposedly guarantees you better drops. You go up in tier whenever you gather enough XP or perform in a way that the game deems as worthy. You can also manually set it if the difficulty gets a bit much. Only thing is that it's practically pointless. It states that around tier 6 or 7, you are supposed to be getting a bonus of over 200% chance of getting better loot. Yet, I am still getting green pieces of loot and hardly any purple gear. For a little while, the only way to guarantee a purple piece of gear was by completing bounties and hunt missions. This was, to me, worth my time, especially since these missions were not particularly easy to take on. Unfortunately, this was nerfed. Now you are not guaranteed to get purple rarity gear because Square Enix says so. Which brings me to a different pain point. Square just thought that the best solution to providing a better experience to the Pyromancer and Devastator was just by nerfing the other classes that seem to have it better. Not only do I think that this is ridiculous, I also believe that this is not going to sit well with people who have already been playing the game since launch. These people have already grown accustomed to the classes that they are using, and it makes solo-based play even less appealing. According to the dev team, there was an exploit that was causing imbalances in matches during expeditions. That is why the nerfs were made. By nerfing the loot and nerfing the stronger classes and not just simply buffing the other classes that are having trouble or, possibly making the mechanics a little bit better for the abilities, they have artificially extended their game's life cycle. This is neither smart or ethical, in my honest opinion. It just makes the game that much more intolerable to play. I also must state that the bosses in the game are ridiculous to fight half the time. There's a system in place that supposedly allows you to interrupt attacks. If you use certain abilities while the said boss or mini-boss is readying an attack, you can cancel it out. But when it is done once or twice, the boss becomes immune to any kind of interruption after that for a short while. Most of the time, the system did not work for me. I would do interruption attacks on certain bosses and it just wouldn't work. putting me in harm's way and getting hit anyways. One can argue that, oh well, it's a boss and it's supposed to be hard. Then I must counter back by saying, then why have the meter show up for the bosses or have this system in the first place? Or maybe, I don't know, create better bosses? Every boss that I fought in the game, gigantic or human-sized, were bullet sponges that could melt me in 1 or 2 hits. Here I am supposed to be this awesome soldier with superpowers, and I can't even handle 2 hits from Hannibal the Bonebreaker, who is just as big as me. Then there is the final boss. Oh man, I really hated that boss. It let me know even more of what I didn't like about this game. It took me major patience to get through that, and it made me notice that most of my deaths were generally from moves or abilities that didn't even show up on my screen, and somehow melted me away like I was nothing. I understand what the devs were trying to do. They were trying to create a more hardcore combat system that would force the player to think and manage their abilities more intelligently. They just failed in the part where using your abilities even matter. The last thing that I will say about the structure of the game is how you progress through areas. It's really just kill a bunch of bad guys, open a door, go to the next area, rinse, and repeat. Just play the game for 3 hours, and you have practically already played Outriders. Hate to say it, but that is the truth. There were also times when I would try to take on a side quest, but the area I'm supposed to go into doesn't even let me pass through. I cannot finish these side quests because of this bug. I literally have a blip on my map telling me where to go, and I can't go there. And there's no reason for it. Advertising your game to be a co-op and a single-player third-person shooter and having it require a connection to your server is not appropriate. The devs have come out saying deliberately that this is not a live service game. But isn't it? This game heavily relies on an internet connection to even open. If you are not connected to the server, you cannot play. The game heavily encourages you to play with friends, and everything is saved on the cloud, not on the console. Then there are those promises of putting out more content over the next 5 years. All of this just confuses me. It makes me wonder who is calling the shots over there at Square Enix, because this kind of advertising is very deceptive and gives off the wrong kind of message. When the game was first released a couple of weeks ago, 60% of players couldn't even log into the game. I was lucky to even get into a game and play. And that was me playing solo, not with friends. When trying to play with a friend, the game would lag non-stop, and I couldn't even use my abilities effectively half the time because of my cooldowns not even showing up on the UI. There were even times that the game simply wouldn't even let me use abilities. This happened in single player at times too. For example, the Trickster's teleport ability, about 30% of the time, whenever I would teleport, I'll be praying and hoping that I didn't just stand there in the open looking like a mook while the enemy is still shooting at me or charging up an attack when I'm supposed to be right behind them upon activating the ability. I will say, however, that the expeditions at the end of the game are interesting and provide a decent challenge. But this is too little too late in my opinion. I don't think that I should be forced to go through 30 plus hours of gameplay before the getting actually gets good. Like I stated before, I love the people from People Can Fly, and I do have great respect for Square Enix. But this is a good example as to why you should be hiring stress testers and quality control for your game. And if they did do that, and those testers gave them the thumbs up, then those testers need to be fired, or they just weren't listening. I don't know. I don't claim to know what is going on behind the scenes. All I do know is that this is a product that has great potential, and now it is suffering because it was simply released unfinished. I really did try to enjoy this game. Heck, my expectations were not exactly that high to begin with, and they were just shot down with how broken the game truly was and how unpolished its mechanics were. It has been made very apparent that there are some people who will say that they have little to no issues with the game and love it. Those people, I say, all power to you. If you are enjoying what you have purchased and are having a good time, I am not going to shoot you down for that. But acknowledgement must also be made to people like myself who have experienced so many issues firsthand and are not getting as much enjoyment because of said issues. These issues are very real, and they are making other people's purchasing decisions for this game regrettable, to say the least. When the game starts working, it does work. Fun is to be had, but only when the game is actually working and not kicking me out of the servers or having me lag all over the place when I'm trying to play online with friends. I am also very aware that there are people saying that this is how games are now upon release, that any online-based game is going to have issues like this during its launch month. To that I say, no. There was a time when developers needed to be releasing full games and could not rely on patches to keep their products afloat. If it was unfinished or a buggy mess, the game would not sell. And more times than not, that developer would lose all credibility. You are spending your hard-earned cash to play these games. If you are not getting a finished product that is worth that $65 price tag, then you are being cheated. It's because of comments and threads saying this that is allowing and enabling development companies to get away with messes like this, because they believe that they will be let off the hook that easily. So to those of you who did buy this game at full price, are experiencing these issues, and feel like I do, I am very sorry. If you have an Xbox and happen to be subscribed to the Game Pass, download the game and see it for yourself. I would not recommend buying this game at full price, especially in its current state. Spend your money somewhere else. If you want to truly support People Can Fly and you feel like as if they deserve some kind of love, then download Bulletstorm or get Painkiller. They're dirt cheap and they are super fun, and they're way more fun than this travesty. And when it comes to Square Enix, yeah, support their other better products, because this is not one of them. If you have found this video to be insightful, please do leave a like. It does help the channel. If you have played the game and want to start a conversation, leave a comment down below. Finally, if you want to see me talk about more nerd stuff, consider subscribing and hit that bell icon so that way you don't have to miss a single one of my uploads. Thank you for watching. I'm off to play a much better and finished game.